All right, guys, I think we're going to get started here. Welcome to the last session of Bar Convent Berlin at the Park Street University stage. It's good to see you all. Hope the energy levels are still high and you guys are all hanging in there. It's been a long 3 days. I'm Emmett. I'm going to be your stage moderator for today. And we are going to dive into an overview of route-to-market strategies, both in the EU and the US. And to do this, we have some awesome experts here to help me. For those unfamiliar, at Park Street, we provide import and distribution services to thousands of entrepreneurs around the world. And the reason we do this stage is because we firmly believe that the more resources and education emerging entrepreneurs have, the better their chances are of longevity. But just to give you guys a little bit of a sense of how this is going to run, each presenter is going to come up and give a 12 to 15-minute presentation on their given area of expertise. And afterwards, I'm going to invite them to the front of the stage with me, and we're going to run a little Q&A session. So these guys are all experts. Get your questions ready. And yeah, we'll take it from there. But today, we are here to talk about route-to-market strategies, and we'll be delivering a comprehensive overview of how brands can and should approach the US and EU markets. So while the structures governing route-to-market, while the processes are different between the US and EU, there are key principles to developing a coherent strategy that apply to each one. So our experts are going to be covering things like the options available to brands when entering a market, how to manage relationships with distributors, and the best practices for selling in each region. To help me do this, we have some awesome speakers, and the first one up is going to be Salvador Blanco Romeu, the International Sales Director at Samson in Surrey, who spent 20 years of his career building and developing wine and spirits brands in international markets. Salvador will be speaking on the route to market in EU strategy. After that, there's going to be Guillaume Drouin, the president of Calvados Christian Drouin. Guillaume worked as a winemaker and rum brand ambassador before taking over Christian Drouin Calvados, a brand started by his grandfather. And Guillaume will be talking about route-to-market strategies in the US. And then last but certainly not least, we have consultant and brand Sherpa Robin Robinson, the founder of Robin Robinson LLC. That is a boutique consultancy focused on route-to-market strategies for startup spirits brands in the United States. Robin will provide context for understanding why the US and EU markets operate the way they do and compare the strategies that brands should take for each. Without further ado, I will invite Salvador up here.
I am Salvador Blanco. I have been in the drinks industry for the last 20 years. I have been working for Moet Hennessy. I have worked for Berry Brothers and Rat in the United Kingdom, and always related into sales in international markets. Last 5 years I have spent, and I joined a company called Samson and Surrey. And I am in charge of all the international sales. International sales mean anything that it's not the United States and Canada. Samson & Surrey has its own sales team in the United States, but we use a different route to market when going into other international markets. Our focus has been in Europe. We have, and based on data that is available, 70% of our business, of our international business, comes and it's generated in Europe. And that's basically because outside the United States, when we look at the international wines and spirits records, the United States represents approximately 50% of the super premium spirits consumption in the world. The other 50% is generated in the rest of the world, and the biggest concentration in the smallest territory is basically Europe, which represents approximately 15% of that sales. So in total, we have 50% in the US, we have 15% in Europe. So the strategy we have been followed, and what I'm going to share with you is this strategy of concentrating and making sure that we were really allocating the resources in the right direction and making sure that we were following the plan and we were following the path we had designed in order to have develop our presence in international markets. Another important thing that I'm going to mention in a couple of minutes is that it's important to define a clear strategy, and it's important also to define what is the role of international in your business plan and in your plan. So This is a family picture, meet the family. I'm just going to go back where I was coming from, but basically this is the portfolio, the Samson and Surrey portfolio. We are, originally the company was founded 7 years ago. It was founded as a group of craft distillers that wanted to have, and part of the plan was to have an international presence. This is what I was mentioning. Our vision for international is to generate value in international markets. The United States, it's 50% of the super premium spirits consumption in the world, but another 50% is generated outside the United States. International markets have the role to generate that value, monetary value, but also brand value. So brand awareness, brand recognition, both for international consumers and for also US citizens that are traveling abroad. We have 3 distilleries in the United States. We have 2 distilleries in Mexico. We are also producing French single malt whiskey in the Cognac region. So as you can see, it's a portfolio that is very fitted for the United States, but at the same time, with the new trends into the international markets, it's growing very well and it's developing in international markets. From our distilleries to more than 30 countries in the world, in the case of Tequila Ocho. Is this a lot, or is this not enough? I think this is another question that it's important that when you define and when you could generate and when you are thinking about your business plan, you need to make yourself. This is exactly where we wanted to be, and we know where we are going to be, because we have a dream, we have a plan. It's important to have the 2 things, but it's also important to be very rational and to have a plan in order to guide you through the process of internationalization of your brands. As I said, we are where we want to be. We know what is the direction we are heading. And what I want to share with you now is the strategy and the way we are facing the growth and the base we have used and the method we have used in order to develop our presence in international market. This is based in a lot of preparation. This is based in evaluating the real alternatives available, and this is also based on perseverance and consistency. I just use that picture because at the end of the day, this means working out. You need to get ready for the workout, you need to work out, and you need to finish the workout and rest. It's the same process. If you want to get better, you need to work out on anything you do. And this is the process and this is the method we are following. How we are doing that? The first part is preparation. I think it's very important to understand where are you heading to. The way we have done it is that we have done detailed market research of the European markets. There is information available. You need to look for that information, and you need to spend a lot of time looking for that information, because you cannot just stay on the first tier or the first level of information. You need to deep dive into that. I'm going to use the Gin in Europe example in order to give you some information about why those markets seem very similar and are very different at the same time. We need to categorize and size those markets and segments. We need to understand what are the relevant adjacent categories. Think about me selling American whiskey in European markets, which is a market that is mostly dominated by single malt whiskey. If the only thing I am doing is thinking about what is the size of the American whiskey market in Europe, the potential is very reduced. But if I understand that potentially I will be able to capture other potentials and other consumers from categories that are adjacent to it, very likely single malt whiskey, this is going to expand the potential of the markets. So it's not only your category, but it's the categories that can be also interesting next to it. Let's not think about products, but let's also think about consumption moments, and let's think about flavors. This is another way to think about it. We were having a conversation yesterday about our French single malt whiskey, and we were just saying, this might be a good strategy to develop this in the aperitivo world. Suddenly you are not using a typical consumption moment of whiskey, you are just changing it and going into a consumption moment that could generate interest for your specific brand, for your specific spirit. What is the importance of the off-trade versus the on-trade? because it's important also to understand, and you will need to think about what are the skills of your importer, your distributor, your partner in the market, and finally the prices of the competitive set. Just using the example of the case study, I'm just the numbers you can see here in the screen. So when thinking about Europe and when thinking about the key markets, we see that consumption in the top markets in the European region, according to the International Wines and Spirits record, it's approximately 19 million cases. Out of that, 6 million is in UK, 5 million is in Spain, and 1 million is in Italy. So if I'm just following a very quick analysis, I would say, of course, what I need to do is I need to go to the United Kingdom, I need to go to Spain, because this is where the biggest fees are. I'm going to fish where the fees are. But important and relevant data. Just thinking and just going into the next level and just using those numbers. It's basically, in the Italian and German market, according to the IWSR, 45% of the category, it's premium and above. But if we look at the United Kingdom, only 22% of the category is premium and above. And if we look into Spain, only 9% is premium and above. So even if those numbers are really interesting, just the 9% of these 5 million cases, it might be less relevant and less interesting than other numbers that you can see in that screen. So it's very important that you understand, first of all, the size of the market, but go as deep as possible into that analysis using potentially some of these items I'm sharing. The second part is the partner. I think that even if the market is interesting, if we don't find the right partner, it's going to be very difficult to succeed in that market. Why? Because unfortunately, if this partner is not able to deliver according to what you need, it's going to make things very difficult. The market will be there, but this partner might not be able to access this market. So it's important to also use a systematic approach for that partner. How we do it? We first of all identify the potential partners, another research part. Second, we create a profile of what do we need to succeed in those markets, what this partner needs to help us with. And this is very important. We do that in order to avoid internal discussions like, I like this partner or I don't like this partner. We have a method and we try to measure everything. It has to be quantitative. And it's not only qualitative, it has to be quantitative. So we have a model, we follow that, and we measure according to what we think is important, we measure those partners. Things like, does this partner have a premium portfolio? Does this partner has national coverage and especially has a presence with a team in the key cities? Does this partner have a well-trained sales force? Or does this partner have a relevant presence in the on-trade because of the team and because of the brands? Or finally, are they able to build brands, or they are just big partners that will help us in order to get the distribution, but not really working on the brand building? These are things that we are trying to measure, and we are trying to understand if they are going to help us, and they are able to help us on that because we believe they are relevant. Maybe these items are not relevant for when you think about markets and partners, but what I recommend is to just make sure that you are making that in order to have take away all the qualitative evaluation from at the start and just use qualitative and just put that part of more emotional at the very end, but be able to measure those partners by doing that. We rank them. And another very important thing is when we go to a market that we believe it's a relevant market for us, we don't go just with our portfolio and just with a portfolio presentation. We use all the information we have gathered before in order to make a proposal and just project what do we think and what can we add as with our portfolio in their business. Because at the end of the day, it's all about numbers. So if you go to a partner and you say that this is the market, we believe that we can capture this percentage of the market, with this margin it will generate that business, he will be able to, or these partners, they will be able to convert it into numericals and say, oh, I can fund another sales person in my team, or I am able to decrease the overhead, the cost of overhead per case sold, or I am able to do many things. So we are again converting that into numbers and making it relevant for them. It's not just about our brands. Here are my brands, they are very nice. It's about making sure that we are able to explain them our objectives and we are able to explain them what can we add from a numerical point of view into their business. But this is just the beginning. Why? because it's about perseverance and consistency. We have a say in the spirits world that it takes 20 years for an overnight success, and I really believe in that. I have seen that in different occasions and different stages of my life. Something that you think that happened overnight, you just dig into and you see that we started to work with this brand 10 years ago, and suddenly things have accelerated over the last 3 years. But then everybody remembers the last 3 years, but the reality is that things started 10 years ago. So this is very important. Things do not happen overnight. So if you are sure you are doing the right thing, if you are sure you are with the right partner, be consistent and persevere. Also very important, we have found a partner. This partner is an expert in the market, but they are not experts in the brand. They need your help. They need your help in order to understand how to promote, how to sell this brand in the market. So that means that the first thing you need to do is you need to go to this market with a lot of experience with the brand, with your own brand, in your own market, in the home market. Because the first question we always get when we start with new partners is, what has worked in your markets? What are the success stories that you can share with us? It's important to have that. So do not rush into getting international markets into the plan. It's important to have an experience in the local market, because not only the local market, but also because of the deep knowledge and learning you will have about your brand in the home market. This is also very important because it will help you to share that experience. You need to work on a launch plan with your partner. You need to agree the strategy, you need to agree the timings, you need to agree the objectives, you need to align expectations at the end of the day. Also very important to avoid conversations like, we are doing very well, and you answering, I don't agree, you are doing very bad. So if there is a number, if there is an objective, it's much easier and the conversation will be much more productive on that sense. So it's important, it's a difficult conversation, but I would also recommend to have this type of conversations with your partners in the market. You need to do brand trainings. You need to do brand trainings to the sales team. You need to do brand trainings to during the pre-launch to the key stakeholders. They need to understand about the brand. They need to listen about the brand. If you are the founder, you will be able to explain about your story. You will be able to explain about your experience with the brand. If you are part of the team, you will also be able to explain about what is your experience, or even talk about what the founder, what's the story of behind the brand. This is very important because what we are doing is we are giving resources, we are giving tools to the sales teams to go into the market in order to start to promote that brand. Market visits. It's important. Why? What are market visits important? Spend as much time in the market. It's not only important because of the fact that you are going to visit 1, 2, 3, 5 clients, customers in a day. It's because you are going to spend 1, 2, or 3 days with a salesperson or with a marketing person that will be listening about your brand and about the story during the whole day. This will help them to understand the brand. This will help them to ask questions so that they feel much more stronger when the next day you are leaving and they will remain in the market selling the brand. This is also very important. Don't think about, I have visited 5 customers or 25 customers. Think about, I have spent a whole day or a whole 2 days with a sales team that every single day will be promoting my spirit in this market. I think this is very important, and I would use that perspective better than just thinking, I have visited 10 customers in this city, now I am a city expert. No, we are not city experts. We know about the brand, we start to learn about the market, they are the experts, and we need to help them to promote the brand. And then the same thing, do follow-up calls. Why? Because even if we think that the strategy is well done and it's well executed, it will need adjustments, it will need follow-up. It's all about test, refine, and roll out. If resources are limited, let's make sure that we follow that execution from the very beginning, and we make very clear milestones and very clear points during the stage, during that time, in order to make sure that we are not overspending in something that is not generating either brand awareness or sales, or we are not underspending in something that could be generating brand awareness or sales. So overall, the European markets are very, very, very different, even if they look similar. We just need to make sure that in order to increase the success chances, we concentrate our efforts in identifying and targeting the right markets with the right partner and consistently apply the right strategy. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Guillaume Drouin. I'm the third generation of Calvados Christian Drouin estate. The company was founded by my grandfather. My subject today for you will be to try to explain how a niche product like Calvados can reach the American market. So just a few figures about what Calvados is. Calvados is 6 million bottles sold worldwide, all producers together. So you see it's a very small category. We do about 14% of the total Calvados exportation value. So we're not that big neither. When you go to the US, well, Calvados is not known or not very well known. It's never a priority for a US distributor. And but it's still, though, quite a valuable product, which is also growing in the bar industry. It's a spirit that the distributors can sell for a good price with good margins, so that's an interest for them. And it's a kind of product that will make that portfolio look different from others. So at the end, I would say, every good distributor is going to need a Calvados. Distributors are going to need niche products like Calvados, even if it's not what they make their money with mostly. So what is a good distributor for a niche product? Well, a good distributor for a product like Calvados should be able to focus on high-end products, specialty products, which require a specific attention. When you come to a market with a product which is completely unknown, one of the key factors of success is to be able to teach people. So you will have to do a lot of training, education, and you need your distributor to help you for that. It's not something you can do just by yourself. The distributor the importer should also have the capacity to bring in a known category to the market. And to explain his customers what is valuable in your product, what is interesting in your history, what makes your Calvados special. So a good importer, distributor is not only doing logistics for you, but it should also be a brand builder. And that's what we're all looking for, but it's not always easy to find, actually. So I've tried to describe the different possible approach to the market in the US. The easiest is certainly to try to find a national importer. So the national importer is going to tell you, well, I'm going to take your product and I'm going to sell that everywhere in the US. And he's going to show you a list of distributors he works with. He's going to have one distributor in each state. And he's going to promise you, well, that's what I'm going to do. I take your product and I put it in all these states. And it's an easy approach to the market. It's pretty fast to start with, but it's not always 100% efficient because we'll see that there are quite a few points that are not always going as easy as one could expect. For instance, your access to the market, if you go with a national distributor, is going to be quite limited. This national distributor, he usually doesn't have so much time for you. So you're going to ask him, I want to come and visit my customers. And he's going to tell you, well, perfect, but I can give you 10 days this year because my sales team is too busy. So that's all you can have. So you have to train the market within 10 days. And if we speak about a market like the US, it's very difficult to do that with it. It's just impossible, actually, to do that in such a short time. So they're not going to give you a lot of access to the market. The process of introducing your product to the market is also going to be very long, simply because even if they work in maybe 40 states, your brand is going to start in 5-6 states, and then you're going to grow. You're going to get new states one after the other, and each new state is actually a lot of work They're going to have to convince the distributor they need your product. They're going to have to send prices, set all the logistics, and actually every time it's a big work for the importer. And so you would expect that you would be in 40 states very quickly, but it's not going to happen like that. It's going to take time and a lot of discussion and a lot of frustration, actually, really at the end. Most of the national importer now work more and more with the major distributors in the US, like Thousand, they just a few of them, and more and more, that's their strategy, and so they work with distributors which are huge, that have a portfolio which is big like that, with the main brands in the market, and so they work is to get a bit of attention from these distributors on their own portfolio. So considering that it's already difficult for them to get attention on their main brand, if you're a product like Calvados, if you're new a product in the market, you will have even more difficulty to get attention from these very big distributors. So it's a real question when you look at what is a good importer for your brand, is to look at what distributor they work with. Do they work with some of the very big distributors that have huge portfolio, or do they work with smaller distributors that have the capacity to pay more attention to a small brand like your brand? A second strategy could actually be to say, well, I don't want to go with a national importer. I'm gonna work with different regional importers, and they're gonna sell in a few states. So for example, you can have an importer in New York, and he's gonna sell around New York. He's going to sell in Connecticut, in a few states around New York. And you can have another one in California, and you might have the chance to find one in Illinois. And so like this, you're going to have 3 or 4 regional importers with a local distribution. The interest of that strategy is that, well, first, your price on the market is going to be better because you have one margin less in the process to get your product to the customers. You're going to have a better contact with these distributors because basically there's not an importer between yourself and the distributor. You speak directly with them, so it's more efficient to organize market visit on the ground, to set a strategy with them, to do all the work which is needed. So that strategy is very interesting, but you're not going to cover all the US with that strategy. You might focus in 10, 12 of the main states, which is, probably already quite a lot, considering that, the high-end spirits are not sold everywhere in the US. But there are some regional areas like Texas, California, New York, Illinois that are usually the places where most of the very premium spirits are sold. But then you may think, okay, I want to go further than that, and so you can combine this strategy with working with some of the retail chains that can be also regional, like GHI, Goody and Goody, or etc. And that you can have your product locally with some distributors, but also work with the retail chains, which is going to have shops in a particular region, and that can work pretty well. But it needs that you have a good understanding of the market and see who is doing what and where, so that at the end your strategy is efficient to cover all the market segment and geography. The next step could be to have your own stock in the US, because when you want to reach a very small distributor in a small state and you have a niche product, he's going to tell you, well, it's great, but I'm not going to make importation of that. It's too much work. I don't want to keep inventories of your products. It's too costly for me for what I'm going to sell. So then the only solution is to have your own stock somewhere in the US, and you can send to him limited quantities. And then with that strategy, you will cover even more states and go deeper into the market. Having a stock in the US is a cost. You're going to pay for that. You're going to pay a logistical company for making the inventories, for storing the products, for shipping the products. for doing the accountants on all these things. So it's a real cost, which is worse, I think, only when you reach a certain amount of sales. So it's definitely probably not something to do to start with unless you have very big ambition and a lot of money to invest from the beginning. And then the last suggestions might be, sometime you can create small brands for some small distributors or actors that you will meet in your way, and one is going to tell you, well, I want to have a Calvados, but I already have the agreement here, and so you can have different brands for a different route to the market, different strategies every time, and that's also a way to increase your sales and your global turnover in the market. Yeah, that's what I can tell you from our own experience. We work in the US with actually 2 different distributors. So we have 2 different importers. We have one which is on the East Coast, which is Baron François, and they sell in a few states around New York. And we work with Hoteling, which is normally a national importer, but we have an agreement with them that they don't do New York and they do the rest of the country. And we also have actually 2 other brands, actually even 3 other brands, which are in the market with for some of them a local approach, for some of them a national approach. So yeah, that's how we do.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here. My name is Robin Robinson. I'm going to kind of give an overview of what we just talked about, and because I'm in the United States, I'll probably do a little bit more emphasis on going to market into the United States, but I want to kind of give a contrast and compare as to what, kind of an overview of what Guillaume and Salvador have both said here. I'm the author of this book, The Complete Whiskey Course. I've got another one in the making. I've got the longest running whiskey class in the United States. I've been running for 14 years in New York City. But primarily what I am is what I refer to myself as a brand Sherpa. Every brand wants to get to the top of the summit. I'm there to meet you at the base camp and make sure you understand how to zip up your parka and not get lost in the snow. So I've got a bevy of clients, and I primarily focus on small brands that are startup brands that are actually trying to get into the market for the first time. I used to be an actor. That was my first career. I moved from being an actor into Silicon Valley, selling very high-tech technology systems to Fortune 1000 companies. And then I got into the liquor industry. So I sort of bring a comprehensive view of how to go to the market from what I've learned in all 3 of those industries. So the issue at hand here is, how do we actually do these things? What are the strategies? What are the tactics as well? A strategy is fine, but if you don't have the tactics to support that, and understanding what is the difference between them is going to be a key to your success. Where does education? We've talked about some issues here about where education really plays a big part of this, about brand education, but also, for example, in the case of Guillaume, category education as well, right? I mean, Americans, we started out drinking apple cider and then Applejack, and yet we still don't understand what Calvados is. So there's a whole category in education that has to result, as opposed to this is a distilled spirit that comes from apples or whatever that may be. The most important thing that they both touched on is, what can you expect to gain and how much do you have to lose? And that is the balance that everyone has to kind of take into account when they look at going to market in either one of these areas. Now, there's a prime difference that happened between EU, or the European continent, and the United States. And it comes down to something very basic. So I want to take some time to talk about what is really underneath the U.S. market, and it's this. It's something called temperance. Something called temperance. And this was a movement that started in the 19th century. It came out of England and Ireland, and it was all about the belief that alcohol was destroying families and killing productivity in industrial societies. Number one is really what's down underneath all of this. Alcohol is bad. Now, in the European continent, over 1,000 years of wars and factionalism, it didn't really kind of like stick here as much. But when it came to the United States, it became the fundamental underneath of what we do when we sell alcohol in the United States market. It's primarily led from a Protestant movement. It was actually came out of the Methodist movement in the United States. And the whole idea of temperance is complete eradication of alcohol. Why is that important? Because that is what's underneath American consumption and selling, is the belief that this is bad for us. That this is bad for us. The European continent, like I said, it kind of escaped it. It didn't really set in here like it did into the United States. There's a lot of reasons for that. And then when the EU was formed in the 20th century, in the end of the 20th century, it helped sort of override a lot of the factional differences that happened inside of in the European continent, as far as currency, as far as free market systems. And what Guillaume, for example, what Salvador is dealing with is issues of personal, of country, of language, and things like that, okay? Nowhere else in the world was temperance written into law, except into the United States. And as a result, it evolved the three-tier system that we know today. I'm going to give you a real quick picture of what temperance looked like in the 19th century. And about 1835 is when it picked up. Keep your eye on the yellow states. The yellow states are all the ones in which alcohol was freely served, freely distributed, freely made. 1855, 1905, 1919, by time temperance was put into place as prohibition, alcohol was eradicated in the matter of you cannot sell, you cannot manufacture, and you cannot transport alcohol in the United States. That's what prohibition was all about. And then what happened? Well, everything that we talk about here, this entire show, which is very interesting, brings up the whole idea of speakeasies, about bathtub gin. All that stuff was a result of prohibition. A lot of the culture, bar culture, that is a result today came out of the fact that we weren't allowed to actually deal in this product for about 13 years. And finally, it was repealed. But the repeal was different. The national government, the federal government in the United States said, we're not going to be in the business of controlling this. We're going to kick it down to the states. We're going to let you license it because you're already licensing barbers and you're licensing doctors and you're licensing education. We're going to allow you to license alcohol. And that became what we know as the three-tier system. And this is what we're facing today right now. We've got 50 different states. We've got 50 different ways of selling alcohol. And that becomes the problem for someone like Guillaume coming into the United States, right? We can put these in three different categories right here. The first category is what we call open or free market. So the three-tier system is all about me as a producer over here, not allowed to being able to sell to you as a consumer. That's what the three-tier system is all about. So we actually now have these two entities in place, okay? So what happens in an open market system, Guillaume is a supplier. He has only one legal customer, and that is a registered distributor in each one of those 50 states. That's the only person that he can legally sell his product to. They, in turn, can only legally sell to the next tier, which is the trade. That's either open package stores and retailers or bars and restaurants over here. And then they, in turn, are only legally allowed to sell to the consumer. That's your three-tier system. That happens in about 30-some states. We've got 17 or 18 states that are called control states, in which case the state itself puts themselves inside of that 3-tier. You have to go through the state and get permission from them. So it's not an open market like in the first group. Now the state is involved. And then the third one is Texas and South Carolina. They've got something called the invisible 4th tier, in which I am a supplier. I can sell to a distributor. The distributor now can only sell to a special retailer that has what's called a Class B license, and they in turn sell not only to consumers, but to the on-trade as well. So when you go through Specs in Texas, which is one of the big stores right there, you're shopping for Calvados, and right next to you is the owner of a bar shopping for the same Calvados that he can actually now put into his bar. He's going to get a special discount rate. So those are the 3 groupings. You can see why this is incredibly, incredibly confusing. That's what the control markets look like. Those are the 17 or 18, and as you can see, some of them control beer, wine, and spirits. Some of them control wine and spirits. Some of them just do spirits. And then you've got Maryland, which actually goes from county to county to county, depending on which county. And now you can understand why this is a headache for most suppliers coming into the United States. That means that your primary partner in this is the distributor. And so you have to pick the right partner, and you try to get them the right time, right? The right timing on it. The bad news is in 2023, we are dealing with market fatigue. There are so many brands out on that floor, the same amount that are in the United States markets, that you actually have confusion on the side of consumers, and then you've got fatigue on the side of the distributors. So this is another headache in which you've got to actually make your way through and navigate that. So that means you've got a critical sales path. The critical sales path is you spend your primary importance is the distributor. The distributor is the person who is going to get you into the market. They're licensed to do it. You have to set up certain programs with them. You've got to give them a certain amount of attention, but you're going to spend most of your time in the trade. As they both mentioned, you spend most of your time out there doing work withs, doing activations, promotions inside of bars, restaurants, and in the off-premise trade as well. And all of this, you keep the consumer in the back of your mind. You're not selling to the consumer. This is a B2B sale. A B2B sale, that means you've got one job, and that's to make other people money with your product. That's the number one thing that you have to think about. I'm not here to sell to the consumer. I'm here to make sure this product gets to the consumer. If I don't get through the first 2 tiers, I'm not going anywhere. So that means you got to come up with a 3-year plan. The 3-year plan is, number one, your first year is just getting to know how the market works. In whichever of the markets that you pick that you want to go to, you spend your first year understanding what is going on competitively, what is going on from a buying perspective, who has what type of a customer, who's working, who's not working. You spend a lot of time networking with other brands to get the same type of information. Your second year is now you can start putting together a specific game plan. Now that I actually have my data, I have to put the data into a way that I can now use it. That's my game plan. That's my business plan. I can't do that unless I've spent a year understanding exactly how that market works. And then number 3, you do your refinement and you do your focus. You understand, how do I move up different chains? I have an understanding now of what is trending and what is not trending. You've got the numbers coming back to you. You've got your impact for how it's being received by not only the consumer, but mostly by the distributor and by your second tier, which is in the on and off trade. This is why it becomes incredibly, and you see the same thing happening here in the EU as well. They go through the exact type of focus right here, make my refinements, and then move toward the trends. Now, in the United States, you've got some distribution options mentioned by Guillaume. The big 3, Southern Glazers, Breakthrough, and RNDC, they own 60% of the spirits market. 60% of the spirits market comes through 3 companies. Now, just because you're with Southern in one state doesn't guarantee that you're Southern all the states. You have to be registered individually in every one of the states. What Southern and Breakthrough and RNDC all have going for them is each has their own data system. You're registered into their data system, but you have to go from state to state. There's no guarantee that because you're with them in New York that you'll be with them in California. So you have to go out and make that appeal to each one of them individually. The next tier is what we call, and Guillaume had alluded to this, the multiple market distributors. These are smaller distributors in the next tier that have distribution in multiple markets. They're not necessarily national. For example, Winebow Group is out of New York, Pacific Edge is out of California. You've got Young's, you've got National, Johnson Brothers, Blueprint Brands, and Opeachy. Right? They'll have limited impact, but on a national level, they will have. So the idea then is what areas of the United States do I want to focus on, and is this the right distributor for me? Again, it's all about picking the right partner. You've got national import programs. For example, the Guillaume is with 2 of them specifically, right? He's with Hoteling over here and Baron Francois over here, right? They all will have sales teams. It's an importer with a sales team. That doesn't happen all the places. Not all importers have sales teams. Then you go market by market. This particular distributor is in Connecticut, right? They were a wine distributor that picked up spirits brand. I'm in Massachusetts. This was a beer distributor that picked up spirits brands, okay? You take your chances with them, but they probably have the best way of actually getting into the specifics down to the details of those particular markets that they know. Keep in mind that their first priority is wine or beer, and you're a spirit, you're going to be the second priority. So there's your balance again. Then you've got companies like Park Street, LibDib. They typically don't have their own sales teams. They do all the clearing, they do the taxes for you and everything like that, the warehouses, but then you're kind of on your own. Some distributor best practices. Number 1, understand why I'm going somewhere and where am I going. Why am I in this market? The number 1 thing I'm going to tell all of you, stay the hell away from New York. Okay? Right? You already know that, right? If you want big scars on your arms, go to New York, right? Stay out of New York. This is the worst place in the United States to build a brand. Why? It's the most expensive market, right? And it's the one that's most competitive. Everybody wants to be in New York. I have an example of an Armagnac that wanted to actually open up. They wanted to be in New Orleans. I said, why do you want to be in New Orleans? They said, well, it's French and everything. I said, they drink frozen margaritas. It's a tourist town in New Orleans. What you need to do is open up in Wisconsin. He looked at me like I had 7 heads. I said, Wisconsin drinks more brandy than any other state. So if they're drinking more brandy than any other state, you think that there's people there going to want to drink some Armagnac? Absolutely, right? So you have to understand where you're going and why I'm going there. How many of me are there? If I've got one person or if I've got a team, that's going to make an impact on how much incursion I'm going to do into that particular market. Learn how to speak, distributors speak. The distributor does not speak in terms of dollars. The distributor speaks in terms of cases, 9-liter cases. Everything in a distributor speak is all about 9-liter cases. It's not how much money I'm making, it's how many cases I'm selling. That's the language that they speak. Have a plan. Do not stop and drop. This is typically what happens with a brand new brand. I found a distributor, I'm going to drop off, they bought a pallet, and now I'm off somewhere else. My expectation is that they're going to sell for me. Wrong expectation. Wrong expectation. They are not going to. As they have both mentioned, you've got to have feet on the street. You've got to be in there to actually make the impact. Don't be a hopper. Don't go with one distributor for a year and realize the numbers come back and say, oh, these guys are terrible. I'm going to go over and see these guys. Guess what? It's a small business. Everybody finds out. Everybody finds out. The last thing that anybody wants to do is take on someone who's already been through 3 distributors in 3 years. They're not going to take you on. Understand what support means. When a distributor says, what type of support are you providing? It only means 3 things: money, time, and people. How much money you're going to put in the market, how much time are you going to put in the market, how many people are you going to put in the market. So when you decode distributor talk, that's what they're talking about. Support means money, time, and resources. In both cases, in the EU and in the United States, here's your magic weapon. Your magic weapon was actually determined by this guy thousands of years ago. His name was Aristotle. And Aristotle was the first person who said that a story has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. That's one of the most important things that you can understand about putting together your narrative, because your narrative is really your secret weapon. That's what distinguishes your brand from every other brand on the shelves. Now, how do you put that narrative together? The narrative is based on the fact that it is an arc. It's an arc of stories. If I went to each one of you individually and I said, can you tell me your entire story or your entire life in one story, you would laugh at me and you would say, no, I can't, because you're a complex person and you've got many stories in the arc of your life. So does your brand, right? So what the brand narrative means, that it's a complex arc. It's got multiple stories. They are open-ended, and it reflects the ethos or the heart of what your brand is about, the truth. When your brand narrative meets the zeitgeist, and I want to thank our German host for inventing the word zeitgeist. It's literally my favorite word of all time. It means, what is the spirit of the time? What is that ineffable thing that I can feel but I can't touch? That's the zeitgeist. Now, if you looked at the United States right now and you try to figure out what is the zeitgeist of the United States, pretty much these words are going to come up right here. Polarized, anxious, fearful, distrustful. Sounds pretty real, right? Every time you turn on CNN or pick up a newspaper, that's what seems like the United States is about. Here's the good news. As consumers are always trying to heal the zeitgeist. They feel it, and so they're looking for things that will essentially address the disconcertingness of the zeitgeist. So what are consumers looking for? Local, harmonious, socially responsible, authentic, artisan, transparent, something that promotes the well-being of myself and others. These are part of your narrative ethos when you're going to go to market. Your narrative meets the zeitgeist and creates the experience. Because every one of these booths right here will give you an idea. We're looking to actually have a brand experience. That's what's going on over here. You need to do that in your words every time something comes out of not just your mouth, but the mouth of everyone in your line. The distributor, the bartender, the retailer. How does that narrative travel? You share it on social media, and this becomes this harmonious buying circle, right? Your narrative meets the zeitgeist, creates an experience, and it doubles on itself. Why is that important? Because in your brain, there's a science of stories. Now, if I am only regurgitating facts, only 2 parts of my brain are going to be working, Broca's brain and Wernicke's area. They're responsible for the transport and the production of speech. They are fact-oriented. It only lights up 2 parts of their brain. But look what happens when your brain is on story. The first thing that happens is neural coupling. Every one of you is locked into this story with me, and each one of us is actually sharing a neural net right now. Number 2, mirroring. We mirror each other when we hear a story. That allows your story, that allows my story to become part of your story, and there's a harmoniousness. The first time I ever saw this happen was when I went to go see Jaws. The first time that the movie Jaws came out, and I was half fascinated with what was going on the screen, but the second half of the fascination was what was going on in the audience next to me, because every one of them did the same thing at the same time. That was a beautiful example of what your narrative actually has the ability to do, is to create that. Number 3, it releases dopamine. It makes you feel better. When you hear a story, think back when you were 5 years old. What was the thing that turned you on most besides dinner? I'm going to tell you a story. That is a dopamine release. Cortex activity, not just in the frontal, but also in the motor cortex. What happens when you tell stories is that your entire brain lights up. And that's what you're looking to do, no matter who tells it. Now, when Guillaume gets out there and tells his story, he's the owner. Okay, so he's got a certain impact. But he's going to be gone and back going to another market. Now that narrative actually has to sit with the worst sales guy on his distributor team in Wisconsin. That's where the narrative comes to work. It's what I call the North Dakota complex. If your brand sits on a shelf in some liquor store in North Dakota and someone walks in there and has an emotional connection to it, you've got a brand. That's the power of your narrative. And in order to get that happening, you have to think of it as a long arc. Many stories, windows, reaching into the same room, so that it is flexible and still represents the heart and the ethos. This is what I do for a living. I created a template of the narrative arc in which every story gets put into this template so that it survives not just the principal stakeholders, but each one of the people who are going to encounter that narrative and then pass it on to someone else. And that's me, and we're going to move into our next part. Thank you.
All right, all right. Thank you so much to our fantastic panelists for bringing us closer to these markets here. I'm going to invite Guillaume and Salvador onto the stage so we can jump into a quick little Q&A here. If you have a question for these guys, just shoot your hand up and I will come bring the mic around. Anyone have a question for these guys here? Anyone at all? Got one in the back over here.
So this is for you, Robin. You said New York was the worst. I'm actually a brand owner. I'm launching in the U.S. right now. It's the worst. What is the best? California?
The best for what?
So I make.
You see why that question is so important.
Sell it in Wisconsin. Got it.
So, and remember, California's 2 markets. Northern California and Southern California, they might as well have a line in between them because they actually act as 2 markets from a buying perspective, even though it's the same legal entity.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I actually produce 100% agave spirit made completely in India.
Yeah.
So it's an agave distillate.
Awesome.
So the U.S. is my largest market by far, and I'm about to launch there. So where should I concentrate?
Well, good question. Okay, so the first thing you would do, and both Salvador alluded to this, is do your homework. So if you have an agave spirit, okay, who's drinking agave spirits? Which state is it drinking agave spirits? Number 2, you've got an international brand. You've got an Indian agave spirit. So now you're not from Oaxaca. Now you're not from Jalisco. Now you're from India. So now my second way to look at this would be to actually, where is the world whiskey? Where is the world spirits market as well? Do you have anything to add to that?
I 100% agree. I think that it's identifying the market that is most relevant in the States. And again, I think the experience you have of selling it in other markets in your home country will be very relevant and very important to explain it to the market. I was also alluding that you need to go to the market because you need to help the sales team. And also, and something I didn't mention, and it's very important, is that you'll be also receiving feedback about your brand in this market. It will help you to evolve that speech. It's very likely you will start with a speech, and by capturing the key questions and the key things that that the either consumer or trade or salespersons are telling you, you will be able to adapt that speech in order to make it much more relevant for the market. But you need to work on that speech, and you really need to have a very consistent, solid story and experience before launching in that market. Because if not, it's going to be really, really, really a struggle in order to promote it outside your home market.
Guillaume is in California, so he can give you a little insight.
Well, I mean, my main advice would be, because an agave spirit from India for an American is something very exotic. So I believe, you should really look at what the distributors have in that portfolio and find distributors that are good at selling a difficult product to sell. I mean, they have to be adventurous because that's what your product is going to fit with.
All right, perfect. I think we have one more question right here.
Hello, I'm French, sorry for my accent. I really loved everything you said, but my main question, I am from a French distillery. We are quite new, we are 6 years old. We have a very nice storytelling, we have very nice product, innovative. So all this part is easy. When we speak face-to-face to people, customers, they really love the product. But today, my aim is to find distributors, and it's the very, very, very difficult challenge. When you say that we have to see what portfolio they have, if they are good in selling premium product, difficult product, all this, fine, I do it. But at the end, even if I identify, I don't convince them, or it's all the time the reverse situation. They have the power to decide yes or no, and it's mainly a no because the competition is very high. So my question is how to find distributors?
I am Spanish, excuse me for my accent also. It took me 1 year to find the right distributor for us in Spain. It does not happen overnight. You have to be very lucky to really solve that situation in 1 year. We have gone through almost a 3-year, 4-year process to find what we think that are the right partners for us in Germany. I think that what I was saying about it takes 20 years for an overnight success is very important. Continue work hard in France. One thing you have being French and selling a French spirit is that French love their products. They have very nice flags in most or in many labels because they really love the local part of it. And while you continue doing that in your home country and learning about it, you will be able to explain more stories and to get much more attention from the international markets. But as I said, I am Spanish. I have lived almost all my life in Spain. It took me 1 year to find the right partner in Spain.
So I've got a follow-up to that. One of the things that I mentioned here is there's a couple different routes to market for finding a distributor and getting one. One thing that you may want to consider is going with, for example, an importer. Okay, so someone like Park Street, they get you into the country. Okay, and then it's going to be up to you to find the market. That's where you have to do the homework initially, right? So I'm sorry, what was the product that you have?
We have a gin and a vodka.
A gin and a vodka. Okay, so everyone's got a gin and a vodka, but it's French.
Yes.
Okay, now, there is your key right there. That becomes part of your narrative action now. It's a French one, right? So now what's the most famous French vodka in the world? Yeah, right, exactly, right? So you're not going after them, right? You're going to go into the markets where they're drinking vodka, where they're drinking gin, right? And if you go in with like Park Street, it allows you to do that first year of gathering evidence, gathering information, in which case you will be making contacts. While you're there, you're not only trying to get the product out into the marketplace, but you're there to investigate that particular set of distributors in that state. You call them up. You find other people who are with them. You find information from other brands about what's right for them, is that right for me? And you spend that first year gathering that data so that when you get to your second year, now you can actually specifically say, okay, I think in this market and this market, I've targeted these 3 distributors because they seem to actually have the ability to take a product like mine, and move it out into the marketplace, right? Now you become more of a value to them, because the last thing a distributor wants to do is hold you by the hand and walk you around everywhere. They want you coming in knowing that you've got some understanding of the marketplace. It's all about going to Vegas and throwing dice, right? They don't like to throw dice. They like to own the casino, right? They look at you as like, this is risk, right?
Exactly.
How do you take the risk away? You come in with the education of that first year. And you present them, like for example, what Salvador said, he had a whole business plan. You put the whole business plan, and then when you knock on that door of that distributor through that connection that you made, you've got something to present to them that's solid. Okay? It's still risky, but less risky now.
I want to follow up on that and talking about data. One thing I admire from France as a country is the level of support they have from the Chamber of Commerce and from the different offices they have spread around the world. So just one idea, I'm not saying this might be the main lead, but have you considered seeing where are the main exports of French wines and spirits going into? Because this might give you an opportunity to explore other markets that maybe being a gin or being a vodka, it's less relevant than being French. So this is just an idea, but when you were talking about that, I just realized it's like, don't just get into the level of data and saying where is the vodka market or where is the gin market. Maybe how am I adding value and why am I relevant? And it's because maybe the French origin. Let's have a look at that, and maybe you will find some information that is relevant, and you might have a lead that you are able to follow up. And I am almost sure there will be a French office of Chamber of Commerce in that country or in that city that will be able to help you on that front.
All right, y'all, I think we'll call it there. Can we just get one more round of applause for these guys? Do you have something to add real quick? All good, okay. And thank you guys so much for coming out today and dealing with some minor technical difficulties. And if you guys want replays of this session, you can scan the QR